I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Tarver. She is the Executive Director at the City of Hope in California in the United States. She has over 30 years of experience as a registered nurse, focusing on healthcare quality improvement, the patient and family experience, and promoting the profession of nursing. Dr. Tarver has spent the past 18 years in nursing administration. She is currently the Executive Director for Professional Practice and Nursing Excellence at the City of Hope National Medical Center in Los Angeles County. Chris shares duties as one of the COVID-19 screen site rounding leaders and has written or co-authored hospital policies and procedures to support mitigation of the pandemic. Recently, she was a medical editor, for Beat the Coronavirus, Strategies for Staying Safe and Coping with the New Normal During the COVID-19 Pandemic, which was published in May of 2020. Chris is also the Nursing Practice Director for the American Nurses Association in California. Please welcome Dr. Chris Tarver.
Great, thank you, Donna. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with Dr. Elliott. I love seeing faces on camera. So if you want to come on camera, go ahead. I really love getting feedback when I talk to you. If you're not going to come on camera, you're going to have to use the chat box for me. So if my voice fades out or suddenly you can't hear me, just let me know. And I think we'll go ahead and start off. I love the message, no procrastination on your happiness. Like, I think we should all put that on a t-shirt and walk around with it. Put it on our masks. That would be good, right? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. First, I want to say is thank you to the ResearchGate and Tarek and Praveen and your whole team for inviting me back. I got to speak, Dr. Elliott also, several people got to speak last fall in September, and I'm going to reference that a little bit here. Hard to believe now, February, we're still in the midst of this. And if you caught, I'm in LA County, so I think we have the distinction of being the hardest hit county, I think, now in the United States. So we're still trying to inch our way out of COVID. And so the effect of this is really that this is a marathon, and it's not a sprint. It's a long haul, and how are we going to keep making it? Because we're still months away from it. Our hospital just announced day before yesterday that they're extending work from home and no travel through July 12th. So it'll be well over a year. So let me get going here. And objectives, you'll see we'll talk about some coping strategies and building resilience. So what we're going to do is acknowledge the effects of the prolonged pandemic. We're going to talk about how to thrive, and I have a little call for action at the end. So I think the first thing we need to do is acknowledge where we're at. So there is a lot of really research emerges daily on just about everything. But for the pandemic, now that we're a year in, we're starting to see some really fascinating research coming out. And the effects of the pandemic on the mental health of nurses and healthcare workers cannot be underestimated. And I think that's the crisis that's going to come after the pandemic. So, we will get through this. The numbers will drop. COVID will become something like a virus, like the other viruses we deal with. But the long-term effect on healthcare workers and nurses especially is nothing we should underestimate. It's everything we should really focus on. Why? Because of the prolonged stress that we were talking about. The changes in practice have been a whirlwind. I mean, years ago, I had a nurse say to me, when is all this change going to stop? And I'm like, well, it's never going to stop because we're in healthcare. But the rapid change during the COVID pandemic, I mean, even daily, we were like, don't even put a date on this procedure, put a time on it, because in 2 hours, it's going to change. That's where we were a year ago. Supply, the constant worries about, do we have enough supplies? First, there was the worries of, do we have enough PPE? And then there was the worries about, do we have enough beds? Now there's the worries about, do we have enough vaccines? Multiple loss. So hard to find anybody who doesn't know someone who's died of COVID. Hard to know anybody whose life hasn't had loss because of COVID. Loss of being with your family, loss of travel, those kinds of things. And personal fear. I mean, there's personal fear of you know, oh, I had a cough today, or my throat feels weird. Do I have COVID? Especially when the death rates were higher. Um, and some people have said we're battling COVID. Some people have called it a war. Sometimes I think it's World War III. Like this is World War III, and the enemy is in another country or another ideology. It's a virus. And there's a quote from an Italian nurse in a study where she says it's an experience I would compare to a world war. So, 10 months. What has happened in 10 months? There was a study that was published, right, and one of the first studies came out in April last year. At that time, this is just staggering, right? At that time, there was 1.72 million people in the world had been infected with COVID, and just over 100,000 had died. That was April, so that was 10 months ago. I pulled the data earlier this week. We were at literally 110 million more people, and worldwide 2.74 million deaths. And that was also the day that in the United States we surpassed 500,000 deaths. So it's devastated the world really, and yet we still want people to come back. We were preparing for something at my hospital. We were talking to one of our board of directors, and we were like, okay, you know, and what's the message you want to give to nurses? And she said, oh, the message. You know, the message is thank you. Like you showed up and you kept showing up. And is there ever going to be enough words to say that to people? So at 6 months, when I gave this talk, not this talk, but when I talked for the ResearchGate in September last year, I talked about what had been happening at 6 months. What were people saying? What was the feeling out there? And it was people were like, I'm losing it. Like in the last week, I just had to walk out. I was done. I feel like the walls are closing in on me for people who work from home. So I'm in a position where I come to work every day. So I don't have that work from home, but I only come to work and stay in my condo. And then one person's like, the only other person I've talked to is my spouse, and the only other person they've talked to is me, and that's it. And lucky we still like each other. So, you know, that's where we were 6 months ago. Where are we 11 months in? I'm over it. I am just so tired of all of it. Homeschooling for a year. I mean, the parents with their kids, our kids have missed so much. The kids are bouncing off the walls. One mom told me, she's like, I love my kids, but I can't get away from them. And the weather turns bad, you can't even go outside, right? It's rain or snow. And the loss is at so many different levels. So another person I was talking to was, you know, in the past, in the year or 2 years before the pandemic started, her and her husband had traveled to 13 different countries. They both retired. It was their time to travel. It was their time to have fun. And then the pandemic hit, and they haven't gone anywhere in a year. And yet we have the hope too. So we have the vaccine. It is here. We have given it. I personally have given it. I've personally injected. I personally held it in my hand. This is just a picture of me getting the vaccine. So I'm a pro-vaccinator. And if you're not, just message me after. We'll talk through the why that is. But and what was happening with the vaccine? So we started at my hospital in December. I was on a vaccine team December 22nd and 23rd, right before the holidays. I tell you, it's probably one of the best things in my almost 31-year career I've done. And the words that people were saying was, "You're giving me superpowers." I had one nurse start to get all emotional. She started crying. She said, "I don't know why I'm so emotional." I'm like, "Oh, I do. I totally know why you are." And I had people, oh, my mom, we have people with their cameras. My mom wanted me to take a picture. My wife, my grandma said to call her as soon as I get it. I'm like, take all the pictures, hold up the vaccine, take a picture, hold it. When I held the first vaccine in my hand, when the pharmacist handed it to me to inject, and I looked at it, and I looked at him, and I go, I think I might cry right now. So I knew where that nurse was coming from, because the collective work of researchers and industry and our regulatory bodies, and frankly, all the people who are willing to be on the front line of being in the clinical trial. Like, somebody had to say, I'll be a study participant, and give me this vaccine. So like all the collective work of that, I held right there in my hand. I thought, this is historical. This is medical history, but this is world history, and we can all be a part of that. So what I wanted to talk, there's like kind of 6 steps, 6 lessons that we've learned so far, and how it applies to COVID, and what we can do to remember to thrive. So first is face your fears. So face your fears and ask yourself, where am I? I think, Dr. Elliott, you doing your study or your questionnaire every quarter is fabulous. I think right now in COVID, we should probably do it once a month. Like, where am I? There are days I think I need to do it every day. I need to check, like, where am I today? But, you have to ask yourself where you're at. I like the Kubler-Ross change curve. And you might be around people that are at all different parts of the stage, and it changes. So keep asking yourself exactly what Dr. Elliott was saying. He does a check-in with yourself. So, look at this. I think probably shock. Hopefully most people are over a year later, but sometimes I am shocked, and it's so surreal, like how far this has gone and how staggering these numbers are. And I can go back to shock on some days. Sometimes I'm shocked about how people behave, what they say. Like, I can't get the vaccine because I think there's a microchip in it, and they're going to be following us around. And I said, that was the X-Files. It was a TV show. It wasn't real. Like, I've seen the vaccine. I haven't seen little chips floating in it. Don't worry. So denial. I think there's definitely denial. I still hear today that the pandemic isn't real, that coronavirus isn't real. And it's hard as a nurse to not get angry with that, frustrated at people. Like, really? Take a walk with me and I'll show you. Depression. This is the one I start to worry a lot about. I worry about nurses leaving the profession. I worry about the shortage. We were thinking there was going to be a shortage of nurses anyway. There's already a shortage of nurses in specialty areas, and there's areas of California that we have shortages of nurses, like Central California. So I worry about that. And then you kind of start to bounce back. You experiment with how you feel. You can make decisions about what you can control, and you integrate this new way of living into your life. So I think it was Dr. Donna who said this, like, learn from where we've been. So, and your history. So, read the evidence, read the studies. Like, the 5 o'clock news isn't always evidence-based. The person that they stop on the street to ask a question is not evidence-based. So really, we're evidence-based practice in medicine, hopefully. And the studies keep coming out. Read them, get them on your feed, however you can take a look at them. There was a study that came out this week, I think Monday, out of Scotland. They had vaccinated over 54 million people, and they had seen a reduction of 85 to 94% in their hospitalizations. Like, that is hope, and that message needs to get out to the world. The studies about vaccines, right, are coming out every day. We're still studying the vaccines, even though we're giving them. And the studies of long-term effects. So now that we're a year in, we're starting to see the studies come out that say, okay, what happens, 6 months later? We're going to start a new study at City of Hope about, we had done one actually by pure happenstance to study the effects of mindfulness on resilience for a small group of nurses. And just by happenstance, the study started right the same week as the pandemic hit us. So the study became, how does mindfulness and resilience help during a pandemic? But that was the beginning of the pandemic. So a year later, we're going to do the study with a larger scale number of nurses. And understand history. So there is, I'm a big medical history fan. So you look at this here and you're like, oh yeah, I know this graph. I'm watching this in California right now. We're like diving down really quick, right? Have you seen the curve? It's coming down at a rapid, went up really fast, coming down really fast. And then you're like, but wait a minute, Chris. How do you have a graph that has like April on it? Like, it's not April. It's not even March, right? How is that possible? Well, I'll show you how that's possible. This isn't a graph of this pandemic. This is a graph of the 100-year pandemic 100 years ago. And so, like, I could probably get a piece of paper and I could lay our curve in California almost directly on top of this curve. And so, what does this mean? Well, part of it means I hope we don't have this little spike right here. So I hope that does not happen. Maybe the vaccine helps us. But it also gives me hope, like, we do get past this. And 100 years ago, people survived with a lot less than what we have now. So, take that message forward. That there is going to be an end to this. It will happen. Don't blame others. That's another lesson. In trying to thrive and be resilient, there is a great article right now that takes Stephen Covey, huge fan, right, and his circle of influence, circle of control. There's this article, and the references are on the last page, where they say we need to take a look at this in terms of the pandemic. And I think this is like one of the key things you can think about in how to thrive. So I'll walk you through how I look at this. What's my circle of control? My circle of control right now is probably just about me. So in my circle of control, I can double mask, right? Have my double mask here, wear it whenever I go out of my office, which is locked. I can control if I go to the grocery store or use Instacart. I can control putting hand gel in my purse. I can control who I decide to spend time with and not spend time with. I have control over that, and that's how I keep myself healthy and keep my family healthy. What's my circle of influence? Well, I can influence my family and friends. I can spread the word about the vaccine. I can post on LinkedIn, like, I got it and I want you to get it. I can send out the email that says, we got more vaccines in our city and come on this weekend. Anybody, if you're over 65, sign up. I've influenced that. I also have influence, I'm a leader at a national medical center, and I have influence over policy. I helped write policy. We had to write probably the hardest policy I've ever written, and still can't even barely believe it, is our scarce resource policy. And we wrote it in April of 2020, and we wrote it very fast, and it was a collaborative between nurses and physicians. And that was right at the beginning when people were telling me, like, oh, I don't think it's really going to be that bad, and it'll probably be over in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, do you want to know the policy that we just wrote? We wrote the policy of what we're going to do when we have nothing left, when we have no ventilators left, when we don't have enough beds, and we have to decide who's going to live and who's going to die. And really, that's what a scarce resource policy is. And we have to acknowledge that nurses and physicians have had to write this, and they've really had to write it. And some places have had to use it. Some countries have had to use it. And there are people who didn't survive because of that. So we have influence over those kinds of things. And then our circle of concern, that's what we can worry about. So you can worry about a lot of things. You can decide. That's where your control comes back. You control how much you see. I don't actually watch the news anymore. I just watch feeds on my phone, and I decide what I want to see and what I don't want to see. So, and then there's everything else around that. So, take a pulse check. If you find yourself not thriving, but kind of barely surviving, like, are you focusing too much time, right? This is whole Stephen Covey's point. Are you focusing too much time on your circle of concern and not your circle of control? Like, yeah, you can worry about a lot of stuff, but you have control over things, so take that control. Stick together. So here's another lesson here for thriving. So sticking together and finding your snorkel buddy. So when I say sticking together, this first picture right here, this is Mike Machuda. He's one of our security guards. This was in the first month after the pandemic, and this is like the sidewalk of our organization, and this is where we stopped people and we separated visitors and their families. Patients and their families, so no visitors. And it wasn't that great. I'll tell you. Probably that's the other thing in the history of my career, probably the hardest thing I ever had to do. And as a rounding leader, every time there was someone upset about not being let in with their family member, that's what we had to help make better. And we're a cancer specialty hospital. So separating patients and visitors in a cancer hospital is like sort of indescribable, really. And we paired together. We paired up, and Mike was right there. And if, people are like, we were answering these questionnaires for like the ANA, were you verbally abused in the last week? I'm like, in the last hour. Honestly, like it was constant. And, physically threatened. I see an either tech in your head. You totally know, right? And so, and physically threatened, harm. And so my circle buddy was Mike. He was the best. If he heard a voice go too loud, he was like at my side in an instant. He he was kind and greeted people well, and yet he also made sure that all of us nurses were safe, because all the screening stations were manned by the nurses. And our two primary objectives in keeping visitors out and patients in and screening everybody was that we keep the patients as healthy as we could, and we kept the people taking care of them as healthy as we could. Because they were like, well, I need to see my doctor. I'm like, you can call them on telehealth. Because if that doctor goes down, there are only a few people in the world who know how to take care of your loved one or someone else's loved one. Because we do, first inpatient therapies. So, we can't lose the people who know how to do this. This picture on the far right is December 22nd when I got to give my kids vaccine. So it was a great day. He was in line. He saw me. He's like, "You me, you're doing me." So he was actually just won the Healthcare Security Officer of the Year to National Awards. So he's just a fantastic person. So find your snorkel buddy. So when you snorkel, if you snorkel in groups, if you've ever done that, and you're in a big group, like you can't watch everybody. You have to have your snorkel buddy. So my family of four, I take my oldest daughter, my husband takes their youngest daughter, and we're each other's snorkel buddies. We're in the water in Hawaii. Some kid starts yelling, the mother's flagging whatever she's doing. I'm like, what's happening? And I'm like, wait a minute. I have my snorkel buddy. I have to watch that person. They have to watch me. So if you don't have a snorkel buddy yet, now is the time to get one. To get through the rest of this pandemic, you need that person who's watching out for you, that can do your pulse check, and that you're watching out for. You go, oh, I haven't heard from you in a day. You okay? Or, oh, you seem a little down. Or, oh, did you just have to write that next policy that we shudder to think? And then the last lesson is pray or meditate or single task, whatever your faith leads you to, or your beliefs, or you can pray singularly, you can pray collectively. I've been doing a rosary group every Saturday now we're gonna have a year next year. Share inspirations and share hope. So this picture here is one of our nursing units. They put up this board to help with resilience. So up on the top is tasks, and the tasks are something like, when you pull out the task, it'll say something like, put a Post-it note on somebody's computer that says, have a great day. Or go up to somebody and give them a air hug. So it's like a task that you can do. And then in the hope, where it says take what you need, you can see it's empty right now because it's an inspirational message. And so anyone can walk by. It's in a public hallway in the nurses unit. Anybody can walk by and take a message of hope. So, there's those things that we can do for each other to keep this going. I'm a growing meditator. I took it up last year when all this started. Metta meditation is one of my favorites. So in that model, it's 4 rounds, and you first meditate for yourself. And when I taught this last year, we actually did it. We're not going to have enough time, but I'll kind of walk you through what it is. So the first one is for yourself. I wish for myself happiness. I wish for myself calmness. I wish for myself good health. Whatever, and you say it 3 times. You do it like a full minute for yourself. And the next one is for someone that you love, and you're putting this out there, and you're visualizing that person. You pick one person. You can pick different people on different days. You can pick both your kids, whatever. And you're the same thing for them. I wish you calmness. I wish you health. I wish you safety. And then the harder one is you pick someone who's difficult, or somebody that you're having trouble with, or somebody who's, just not quite doing what you think should be done, but you wish them well. You wish them happiness. You wish them safety. You wish them health. It helps you a lot. You think of people in a whole different way when it's over. And then the last one is for the world. And then you're putting out there in the world, I wish you safety. I wish you health. I wish you happiness. I usually do that one for more than a minute because I think there's so many people in the world that need it. And then my difficult one is sometimes it's the coronavirus, and I just imagine mashing it out. I wish you safety. I wish you health. Mashing it out. And then the last one that I put up here that I wanted to talk about is single tasking. So this is a new thing I'm hot on single tasking, and I've decided I'm going to start a blog. Like that's what I just started. That's what I'm going to do. That's my New Year's resolution. And really, when what are you a reformed? So I'm like a reformed. I'm not totally reformed. I'm trying to reform from being a multitasker. And people used to tell me all the time, "Oh, you're the best multitasker, Chris, the multitasker." Okay, so here's the thing: human beings are not multitaskers. Like the human brain can't multitask. The multitaskers are computers. Computers can actually multitask, and that's where the term originally came from. I'm a Silicon Valley native person, so I can tell you it's computers that multitask. And somehow that bled into the human race. And then the human race all thought we can multitask when we actually can't. What we can do is we can pay continuous partial attention. And if you actually think that you're not really multitasking, you're paying attention to one, then you're paying attention to the other. And you know how you know that is like sometimes you'll be like looking at a TV show or reading something, and someone will say something. You're like, did you hear me? And then you're like, actually, I didn't hear you because I wasn't paying attention to you. I was paying attention to this other thing. So I worry about all this multitasking is just adding more stress into a time that's probably the most stressful time that any of us will really know in our lifetime. What's going on in the world. So try single tasking. So you can try really small. So here's some of my tips for trying single tasking. In your car, don't turn on your radio. Just drive. I know it sounds shocking, right? But just drive. Like look around. When you listen to your radio, take a time and listen to a song. This is not while you're driving, because you'll be single tasking driving on the road. so when you can be in a place and not have to do anything else, turn a song on and listen to every lyric in the song. Like repeat that lyric back to yourself. Like, wow, this is like I always like, oh, my favorite song. Pick whatever your favorite song is. Now listen to your favorite song, and as each lyric comes, listen to that lyric back. And you'll be like, God, I love this song, and it's a really great song, and I love this one phrase from it. And I'm gonna like make this something I'm gonna intentionally do this week. Eat food and don't multitask. Just eat your food. Don't eat your food in front of the television or the computer or while you're reading the newspaper. Just like enjoy your food. Enjoy each part of it. I'm Italian. Food is what we love. So food and wine. So don't overindulge in wine. But if you're having a glass of wine, just have a glass of wine. Just do one thing. So that's my challenge, you to give that a try. So I put this quote up about, I think, every single presentation I've done for the last year. I put this quote at the end because I love it so much. It's by Archbishop Oscar Romero, who said, "We cannot do everything." And there's a sense of liberation in that because it enables us to do something and to do it very well. So you can do something. You can do it well. So here's my call to action for you. I have 2 minutes left. Kept on time. So what do you have control over that you're going to change today? So what do you have control over that can lead you to a more thrive pathway? And then who is your snorkel buddy? So who is your snorkel buddy, and do they know it? So go up to that person and say, I just want you to know you're my snorkel buddy. So I'm going to watch you, right, Sandy? Sandy and I are friends. Like, I am going to keep an eye on you, and I want you to keep an eye on me. So if I look like overtired or you haven't heard from me in 48 hours, find me, and I'm going to do the same thing for you. We're going to help each other because we're going to get through this. So you can share in the chat box, or you can come off mic. We have like 1 minute left. My references are there. I think they'll send out the PowerPoint. I'm happy to share it. You can find me on LinkedIn. I post positive things there that's happening in nursing healthcare world. My email is there also.